The air in the office was thick, not just with the scent of pine and cheap holiday potpourri, but with a tension that was uniquely December. It was the kind of cold, calculated anxiety that precedes a corporate bloodletting, or in my case, a devastating theft. My name is Ilara Vance, and for 2 years I had perfected the art of being invisible. I was the diligent, slightly clumsy junior analyst, perpetually overwhelmed, living in a cramped apartment. The facade was necessary, a shield I wore to understand the true rot at the core of Thorne & Coasters, the company my grandfather founded and that my family still secretly controlled through layers of blind trusts. Marcus Thorne, the CEO, was the rot personified. He was a man sculpted by arrogance and entitlement, currently basking in the pre-holiday glow, convinced of his own invulnerability. Today was the day the annual profit-sharing checks were due to be distributed, the coveted Christmas bonus. For me, the check was a formality, a piece of the act. For the real junior analysts, the people I genuinely cared about, it was their rent, their children's gifts, their ticket out of debt. But for Marcus, it was an opportunity. I watched him from across the brightly lit, gaudy office floor, where tinsel hung tragically from every monitor. He was laughing, a loud, booming sound that didn't reach his eyes. He was talking to Gerald, the elderly head of accounting, who looked pale, gripping a stack of envelopes a little too tightly. I knew those envelopes held the bonuses, including the one earmarked for me, the $50,000 performance bonus I had theoretically earned for single-handedly managing the massive Q3 integration project. The $50,000 wasn't just money. It was the designated target of Marcus's greed this year. I had engineered the project, knowing the bonus attached to it would be significant, and knowing exactly how Marcus operated. I had laid the bait. Earlier that morning, I had overheard a snippet of conversation, sharp and damning, behind the frosted glass of Marcus's office. "Move the Vance amount into the discretionary fund, Gerald. It's cleaner that way. She's a placeholder. She won't even notice until January. And tell her the transfer was delayed due to the holiday freeze." The audacity was breathtaking. Stealing $50,000 from someone he perceived as a disposable low-level employee and blaming it on the season. It wasn't about the money for Marcus. It was about the power, the thrill of the taking, the sheer humiliation of the victim. Later, in a rushed and deeply uncomfortable private meeting, Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, a sickeningly paternal smile on his face. "Ilara, my apologies. Seems the bank transfer for your considerable bonus, fantastic work, by the way, is caught up in the holiday banking chaos. Standard procedure this time of year, unfortunately. You'll see it in the new year. Go enjoy the Christmas party tonight. You deserve it." His eyes held a flicker of cold amusement. He thought he was untouchable. He thought I was just a naive girl who would accept his lie. He had taken my money, and with it, he had publicly dismissed my value. The news of my delayed bonus would travel through the grapevine, reinforcing the office hierarchy. Marcus gets what he wants. Ilara gets nothing. The humiliation was the gift he was truly giving me. But the humiliation was not his to give. It was his to lend, and I intended to collect with interest. I spent the next week in a state of controlled fury, moving with the quiet efficiency of a predator setting a trap. While Marcus was busy ordering cases of expensive champagne for the annual New Year's Eve Gala, the culmination of the corporate social calendar, I was busy in the server room using the executive-level clearance I secretly possessed. The theft itself was minor in the grand scheme of Thorne & Co., but it was the key that unlocked the kingdom. Marcus's theft of my bonus was merely one in a long series of petty corruptions. I needed something bigger, something that would dismantle his entire life, both professional and personal. I spent hours poring over financial logs, hidden emails, and encrypted chat histories. I wasn't just looking for corporate fraud. I was looking for something devastatingly personal, something that connected his moral bankruptcy in the office to his moral failure at home. I needed to weaponize the betrayal. The evidence I found was not a single smoking gun, but a detailed 3-year-long tapestry of deceit. Misuse of corporate funds to cover extravagant weekend trips, suspiciously large cash payments to a shell company in the Cayman Islands, and a secret, meticulously planned second life. He wasn't just stealing company funds. He was building a secret escape route for himself and his mistress, a former marketing intern named Sophia. The evidence was damning. Flight confirmations for New Year's Day, signed property deeds in a foreign name, and, most cruelly, a recurring expenditure for a diamond necklace, a gift Marcus claimed to have purchased for his wife Victoria, but which I knew was never hers. Victoria Thorne. She was the final critical piece of my strategy. She was not just Marcus's wife. She was a major silent shareholder in Thorne & Kofulu, a woman who valued reputation and control above all else. She was the one person whose judgment Marcus truly feared, not because he loved her, but because she held his entire, carefully constructed life in her hands. The stage was set for the New Year's Eve Gala, the perfect setting for the seasonal reckoning. The gala was held in the grand ballroom of the city's oldest hotel, a place synonymous with old money and unshakable status. It was here, at the stroke of midnight, when the city held its breath and the champagne flowed, that I intended to deliver my gift. I carefully copied all the evidence onto a small, unmarked thumb drive. I knew delivering it directly to Victoria at the gala would be too risky, too direct. It had to be untraceable. It had to feel like fate, a sudden, unavoidable disaster, one that Marcus couldn't possibly trace back to the clumsy junior analyst who was currently supposed to be agonizing over a delayed $50,000. I drove out of the city later that week, avoiding all surveillance. I had one stop to make before the final show, a quiet, almost ceremonial act of delivery. Victoria Thorne was known for her philanthropic work, particularly at the city's largest children's hospital. I knew her routine. I knew the exact time she took her afternoon coffee in the hospital's quiet, reflective garden, a place she considered her sanctuary. The day was gray and cold, the first genuine snow of the season beginning to fall, a beautiful, cleansing white that promised a fresh start, but only after the debris had been cleared. I approached the wrought iron gate of the garden, my movements fluid and confident, a far cry from the hesitant steps of the junior analyst. I was wearing clothes that matched the weather, expensive, anonymous cashmere, blending into the quiet wealth of the city. I spotted her immediately. Victoria, elegant and severe, sipping tea, lost in thought. She had a designer bag resting next to her on the bench. It was a simple matter of a quick, purposeful stroll past the bench, a slight, almost imperceptible brush of my hand against the bag, and the evidence was planted. The thumb drive, wrapped in a small, beautiful, silver-ribboned box, a Christmas gift disguised as a donation acknowledgement, a perfect, untraceable poison pill. I turned back toward my car, the silent snow dusting my hair. The trap was sprung. The $50,000 he stole was a paltry sum compared to the life he was about to lose. The Christmas season, the time of giving, was about to become the season of taking everything back. I was ready to shed the skin of a Lara Vance and finally, publicly, reclaim the Vance legacy, starting with the shattering of Marcus Thorne's world. The New Year's Eve Gala was less than 48 hours away. It was time for the victim to triumph. The tension stretched taut, vibrating beneath the surface of the corporate world like a snapped piano wire. The days leading up to New Year's Eve were a blur of faux festivity and forced smiles. Marcus Thorne, oblivious to the bomb ticking silently in his wife's handbag, was radiating sickening confidence. He moved through the office like royalty, giving patronizing motivational speeches and accepting sycophantic praise for the company's stellar year, a year largely secured by the efforts of the people whose holiday bonuses he had quietly pillaged. I, Ilara Vance, played my role perfectly. I was the picture of resigned disappointment, subtly reinforcing Marcus's narrative that I was incompetent enough to accept his delayed payment story without question. I made sure to mention the $50,000 to a few key colleagues, sighing dramatically about the holiday banking chaos Marcus had cited. Each sigh was a nail in his coffin, establishing the foundational lie that would make his subsequent fall even more satisfyingly steep. The emotional core of my revenge wasn't the money. It was the sheer, brutal act of public humiliation he had inflicted on others, and the quiet contempt he held for anyone he considered beneath him. The $50,000 was symbolic. It represented the hundreds of small, transactional betrayals that defined his leadership. My plan was not just to bring him down, but to make the downfall spectacular, timed precisely to the most emotionally charged, celebratory moment of the year, the strike of midnight on New Year's Eve. The New Year's Eve Gala was everything Marcus loved and depended on. It was a carnival of power and superficiality, attended by major shareholders, city officials, and the entire high-ranking executive team of Thorne & Co. It was the perfect stage. I arrived precisely at 9 p.m., stepping out of an unassuming taxi. I was still Ilara Vance, the junior analyst, wearing a modest, rented dress that did nothing to draw attention. I carried a small, slightly apologetic clutch bag. My mission tonight was to be seen, to be the background character, the living testament to Marcus's benevolent mediocrity. Marcus and Victoria arrived in a flash of cameras and high society glamour. Marcus, in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looked every bit the successful, powerful CEO. Victoria, regal and impeccably dressed, seemed detached, a slight coolness in her eyes that was unusual for her typically warm, if reserved, public demeanor. I watched her from across the vast, chandelier-lit ballroom. The box, the one containing the silver-ribboned poison pill, was no longer in her designer bag. I scanned the room, my heart rate accelerating slightly. Had she opened it? Had she found the thumb drive? The suspense was a physical pressure in my chest. If she hadn't found it yet, the entire timeline of the revenge would be thrown off. The climax had to hit before midnight. I positioned myself near the main bar, a safe distance from the power cluster surrounding the CEO. I caught the eye of Gerald, the head of accounting, looking perpetually nervous, nursing a scotch. He saw me, and a wave of obvious guilt washed over his face, confirming his unwilling complicity in the bonus theft. He quickly turned away, unable to meet my gaze. Marcus had ensured that everyone was involved, making the company culture toxic from the ground up. Around 10:30 p.m., the first crack in Marcus's perfect facade appeared. Victoria moved away from the crowd surrounding her husband. She didn't seek out a friend or an ally. She went straight for the ladies' lounge, her stride purposeful. 10 minutes later, she emerged. Her face was a mask of cold fury, her eyes blazing with a dangerous light I had never seen on her before. The transformation was startling. The passive socialite was gone. The formidable shareholder had arrived. She didn't approach Marcus immediately. She moved with devastating slowness, scanning the room, her gaze sweeping over the high-profile guests. Then, she locked eyes with me. The look wasn't recognition of the junior analyst. It was the calculated, appraising look of someone who understood. She had seen the evidence. She knew what Ilara Vance represented, the starting point of the rot, the $50,000 he didn't think twice about stealing. The victim had become the messenger. Victoria gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. It was a silent acknowledgement, a cold agreement that the theater was about to begin. She knew I was playing a part, and she was ready to play hers. At 11:45 p.m., the music swelled, transitioning from generic party hits to the more emotional, anticipatory sounds of the final countdown. Marcus grabbed a microphone to give his annual self-congratulatory New Year's address. "Friends, colleagues, shareholders, What a magnificent year! His voice boomed through the speakers, dripping with false humility. We've overcome challenges, we've demonstrated resilience, and we've proven that Thorne and Comert is not just a company, but a family. A family built on trust and integrity. He raised his glass, basking in the applause. I watched Victoria, who had taken a position slightly behind him, her hands clasped tightly. The air was electric. And as we look forward to midnight, Marcus continued, his eyes scanning the crowd, landing briefly on me, we must remember to reward those who embody the values of this institution. I want to toast the future and the hard work of every single person here who helped us. It was the perfect moment. His mouth was full of the word reward, the hypocrisy reaching its zenith. Victoria stepped forward. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the festive noise like shattering glass. It wasn't loud, but it commanded immediate silence. Not everyone, Marcus. The entire ballroom froze. Marcus turned, his confident smile dissolving into a look of bewildered panic. Victoria, my dear, what are you doing? He hissed into the microphone, his voice betraying his fear. I am rewarding integrity, Marcus, she said, her voice steady, amplified by the mic. She walked past him, deliberately moving to a small, isolated table near the edge of the stage. On it, placed earlier by an unknown accomplice, was a small, high-quality projector and screen. Marcus has spent the last week celebrating a magnificent year while simultaneously lying to his employees about their compensation. Victoria announced, addressing the stunned crowd, not Marcus. He blamed holiday banking chaos for delaying the $50,000 performance bonus owed to his dedicated junior analyst, Ilara Vance. I felt every eye in the room turn to me, the clumsy junior analyst. I stood straighter, meeting the gaze of the shareholders with a newfound, steely resolve. The humiliation he had planned for me was now the spotlight of his undoing. The crowd murmured, disbelief quickly turning to outrage. They didn't care about a stolen bonus, but they cared about the lie. Marcus was stammering, his face turning an unhealthy shade of crimson. Victoria, this is unprofessional. We'll discuss this at home. This is family business. No, Marcus, this is corporate business, Victoria countered. She expertly plugged a device into the projector. Not the thumb drive I gave her, but a copy she had already printed and organized. The theft of $50,000 is minor compared to the 3 years of corporate embezzlement, the secret funds, and the planned escape route you were organizing with Ms. Sofia Petrov. You planned to be on a private jet to the Cayman Islands in 6 hours. The screen flickered to life. The first image was a scanned wire transfer. $50,000, not delayed, but rerouted directly from my bonus account to Marcus's personal offshore discretionary fund. The ballroom erupted. The sound was deafening. Gasps, angry shouts, the frantic whispering of shareholders realizing their investments were tied to a common criminal. This was the peak of the escalating conflict, the moment where the secret planning converged with the public humiliation. The stage was set for the complete inversion of power, set to hit precisely when the clock struck the new year. The ballroom was in chaos, but standing amidst the noise, 2 figures remained unnervingly calm. Victoria Thorne, who had just detonated her husband's career, and myself, Ilara Vance, the unassuming messenger of destruction. Marcus Thorne was no longer the CEO. He was a trapped, cornered animal. The festive atmosphere of the New Year's Eve Gala had been replaced by the cold, sharp reality of a corporate raid. Marcus lunged toward the projector screen, his face a mask of primal, unfiltered rage. This is slander! Victoria, you're insane. You've been misled by a disgruntled employee. He tried to rip the cord from the projector, but 2 burly security guards, whom Victoria must have strategically positioned, intercepted him instantly, pinning his arms behind his back. Victoria's voice sliced through the din, steady and lethal. The evidence is conclusive, Marcus. The theft of Alara Vance's bonus was merely the tip of the iceberg. She advanced toward the stage's edge, holding a thick sheaf of printed documents, the receipts of his hidden life, meticulously compiled from the data I had provided. This is the deed for the beachfront property in his mistress's name. This is the paper trail proving the use of corporate funds for the private jet he planned to take tomorrow morning. The crowd's murmurs turned into unified condemnation. The high-profile guests were already reaching for their phones, not to call the police yet, but to call their lawyers and business partners. The betrayal was complete, and it was public. Marcus's power had not merely diminished, it had evaporated into the cold December air. I moved slowly toward the stage, my heart hammering a triumphant rhythm against my ribs. It was 11:58 p.m. 2 minutes until midnight, 2 minutes until the final, shocking inversion of power. Marcus spotted me approaching, and his eyes narrowed with lethal realization. "Vance, you little rodent! You set this up. You think stealing that money gives you the right to destroy my life?" "You destroyed your own life, Marcus," I said, my voice carrying a quiet authority I had never allowed myself to use before. I stopped directly in front of him, meeting his enraged gaze not with fear, but with utter contempt. "You didn't just steal $50,000. You stole from people who needed it. You stole from the integrity of this company. And you did it because you thought I was too insignificant to fight back." "You are insignificant," he spat, struggling against the guards. "A junior analyst, a low-level nobody. You have no power here." This was the perfect cue, the final act of the seasonal revenge, the moment the mask of Alara Vance had to fall forever. I reached up to my neckline, unclasping the delicate, cheap necklace I had worn for 2 years, the finishing touch on the struggling junior analyst costume. I let it drop to the floor. Then I met Victoria Thorne's eyes, and she gave me the faintest, almost imperceptible nod of permission. I addressed the entire ballroom, my voice now clear, projecting authority that silenced the remaining noise. "I am not Alara Vance, the junior analyst," I stated, the simple words feeling like thunder. "I am Alara Vance Thorne, granddaughter of Robert Vance, and the sole inheritor of the majority stake in Vance Industries, the holding company that owns 45% of Thorne & Co." The silence that followed was absolute, a vacuum where the sounds of celebration should have been. Every jaw dropped. The shareholders, who thought they knew every player in the game, stared at the revelation. The company's ultimate power resided with the very woman Marcus had casually robbed and humiliated. Marcus's face, already pale with panic, went ash gray. He didn't just look defeated. He looked intellectually pulverized. He finally understood the full, terrifying scope of his mistake. He hadn't just stolen $50,000. He had attacked the founder's lineage. "Impossible," he whispered, the sound cracking his voice. "The trusts, the paperwork." The paperwork was deliberately obscured and managed by a team you never knew existed, Marcus. "I was here to assess your suitability as CEO. My grandfather wanted to ensure the company was in safe hands. Instead, I found a thief and a traitor." I reached into my small clutch bag, pulling out a document that was much smaller, much more significant than Victoria's files. A single, stamped legal notice. As of 10 minutes ago, under the provisions of the majority shareholding and corporate integrity clauses, the Vance Industries Board has invoked an emergency dissolution of your management contract, effective immediately. I held the document up for the cameras that were now flashing furiously. "Marcus Thorne is officially removed from all positions within Thorne & Co. with immediate, non-negotiable effect." Victoria stepped forward, reclaiming the microphone. She looked directly at the crowd of shareholders, her voice now ringing with victory. "As a major shareholder, I will be signing the criminal complaint for embezzlement in the morning. However, my primary action tonight is to ensure the stability of this company. I am pleased to announce that Ilara Vance Thorne will immediately assume the role of interim chief executive officer. The applause started small, then grew into a roaring, relieved acceptance. The New Year's Eve Gala was no longer a party. It was a coronation. The inversion of power was complete. The victim stood triumphant on the stage. The heir reclaimed her throne, and the traitor was held captive by security guards. The city outside began to explode with light and noise. The giant clock on the hotel wall ticked its final seconds. 5, 4, 3. As the clock struck midnight, marking the arrival of the new year, the sound of the crowds outside celebrating mingled with the sounds of internal corporate triumph. Confetti rained down on the ballroom floor. I looked directly at Marcus, who was being dragged away, his face contorted in silent, impotent fury. "Happy New Year, Marcus," I murmured, a chill finality in my voice. "I hope your January transfer arrives soon." The $50,000 he stole was now insignificant. His reputation was ruined, his marriage was over, and his career was finished, all thanks to a calculated seasonal act of revenge. The daughter of the founder stood where the thief once stood. The new year had begun, and the debt had been paid in full. The victim had not only triumphed, she had taken everything.